hanging over Toronto adjusts daily life across the region.
A lot more sort of headaches, you got to take more breaks, more water.
From outdoor work to school recess, we'll walk you through how wildfire smoke is affecting people in our city.
It's science, right? This is no ordinary fire season.
I'm actually in shock that the Leader of Opposition is politicizing wildfires.
Plus, the amped-up fire season fuels political debate at Queen's Park as the province is already dealing with double the number of wildfires compared to all of last year.
Apparently, boxes around the city have been vandalized.
And the mischief Toronto elections is already dealing with as some Torontonians start to cast their ballots for the mayoral by-election. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. No matter where you go or what you do, the smoky conditions across the region seem to be what everybody is talking about. Environment Canada even increasing its air quality risk warning for Toronto today. The federal agency says high levels of pollution seizing our skies are from those forest fires in northeastern Ontario and as far away as Quebec. Talia Ricci begins our coverage tonight.
This is how a builder describes what it's like working outside on a day like today.
A lot more sort of headaches, you got to take more breaks, more water. I've had trouble sleeping. I think some of the other guys have too. We've never really experienced it to this degree.
And this is how an 8-year-old felt during his morning commute to school.
You know, when you're having a barbecue, these white floating things are like flying, like floating through the air, and like it might go in you and then it's going to be bad.
Environment Canada has increased the air quality risk level for Toronto. The agency says to pay attention to health effects like a cough and a sore throat and to stay inside if you're feeling unwell.
We just can't have as much outside work as we would normally have for sure. So fingers crossed this just passes in the next few days.
It's expected to last at least 2 days, and the high risk means people may want to consider canceling outdoor activities.
Certainly, while it seems unusual for Toronto, it's not uncommon, at least for northern communities, to deal with this every single fire season. It's just, I'd say, more unusual for us in southern Ontario to experience the effects from forest fires.
School boards in York Region said recess would be held indoors all day due to the poor air quality. Peel and Toronto District School Boards have told students they can stay inside if they prefer and have cancelled sports like track.
We have more than 17,000 HEPA filters in all of our schools. So we have, while they've already been used, making sure that those are continuing to be used, especially during these days of poor air quality.
You know, as long as they're taking precautions to take care of our children, I think that's a good idea.
Today also happens to officially be Clean Air Day in Canada, which is meant as a day to recognize how important good air quality is to our health and our environment.
People really need to understand that this is what climate change looks like in action. We are actually seeing the manifestation of climate change. And all these extreme events right now, wildfires, poor air quality, all of these factors are going to become more challenging going forward, period.
I don't want to get too preachy, but I mean, it's not a pleasant society we've created. And this smoke and everything's an example of it. Where is it going to take us? It's scary.
Now, as you heard, recess was optional at TDSB schools today. Tonight, they did confirm that they will be keeping kids indoors tomorrow and also canceling after-school sports. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
Certainly seems like we're all getting a bit of a wake-up this week to air quality science. So Ali Chiasson spent the day breaking down what the readings mean and how they impact our health.
The Big Smoke, a nickname that's hitting a little different these days, with the smoke from forest fires in Quebec and northeastern Ontario wafting our way. Toronto's air quality has been hard to ignore. But what's the real risk, and how do we track it?
The air quality index, we are experiencing values we typically would not see in the Greater Toronto Area very often.
The Air Quality Health Index measures the amount of pollution in the air. In Toronto, we usually hover around 3. Today, we reached 7. Elsewhere in the Greater Toronto Hamilton area, it got as high as 10. And that could be a serious risk to public health. It means there's a lot of particulate matter in the air. That could be pollution particles of all sorts of different kinds. In Toronto and other urban areas, it can be car exhaust, but today it's also
soot that's being released during the burning of these forest fires. And on those particles, a lot of other chemicals bind to them that we're often concerned about. And those chemicals can cause lots of challenges physically with us. They might irritate our eyes, irritate our throat, our nose, as our body's trying to get them out of our system.
masks are recommended if you must be outside, but staying indoors where the cooler, cleaner air is probably for the better.
Especially if you are an at-risk person. That might be a child, an elderly individual. We're always concerned about people who are pregnant as well, or those with existing respiratory or cardiovascular diseases.
These are tiny, tiny particles, and the challenge is that they're small enough that you can breathe them right into your lungs, and they go deep into your lungs, and the tiniest particles, called nanoparticles, actually get into the bloodstream from the lungs, and they can affect many other organs, particularly the heart. So anytime you have these kinds of wildfires, studies show that we see more patients in the emergency room showing up with things like chest pain.
If you're otherwise healthy and say you've been working outside or slept with the window open, you might wake up with a sore throat or a cough.
Our respiratory tract has an important what we call barrier function in keeping bacteria and viruses out. There are many studies that suggest that even healthy people, when they breathe in enough of these tiny particles, there's an impairment of that barrier function. So there's a higher risk of infections.
At risk or not, it may be just best to stay inside. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, 17 degrees and cloudy right now with a chance of showers. Colette is here with a first look at weather as the city continues, Colette, to deal with the impact of all this smoke.
Yeah, Chris, so we are in the special air quality statement, and we will likely see this from Environment Canada in place for the next few days and then see some improvement at the end of the week. Now, at times we get a bit of improvement just because the smoke at surface level tends to vacillate and move around a little bit. But we know what the situation is across the country. We're really dealing with the flow coming because of a northerly wind off these fires in western Quebec and portions of Ontario, and then that brings the smoke not just through our skies here, but very intense, thick smoke into New York State, all the way down through New York City and the eastern seaboard. So we had very high air quality health index at times through western parts of the GTA, GTHA, and over towards the east as well. And we may see that kind of pushing back into the city tonight and into tomorrow. We also have a system, the one that's brought some improvement to the conditions in Atlantic Canada, that's been kind of retrograding and pushing things back our way. So we get increase in cloudiness, some spotty showers, not much to it, but a chance tonight and into tomorrow. And then Friday, a better chance of getting into some wet weather. All of that plus a change in the wind direction helps our situation too with the air quality. Overnight tonight, it's 12 degrees, smoky again for tomorrow, a high of 18 with a spotty shower in the forecast. And we will look at that whole smoke forecast plus the forecast for our air quality in more detail when I come back.
All right, Colette, thank you. So forest fires are not unusual in Ontario, but this many this early is well above the 10-year average. Lorenda Redekop explains how the environmental problem ignited heated debate at Queen's Park today.
The number of fires burning in Ontario is up today. There have been 167 fires this year, already more than double the total for all of last year.
A report that I have heard, approximately 50% of the fires are started by lightning strikes. The other 50% are people starting campfires, not putting out the campfires properly. So I'm asking every Ontarian, please do not light any campfires.
However, right now there is no province-wide ban on starting fires. That checkerboard area shows where fires are restricted. This larger colored area shows the fire danger zones, with red the worst, indicating extreme.
When there is a forest fire an hour and a half outside of Ottawa, the government is still refusing to do a fire ban in the provincial park on the edge of the city of Ottawa. That's bonkers. The government doesn't have the situation under control.
Municipalities have the opportunity to assess the situation where they're at. It's an enormous province with different conditions in some different areas of the province.
On day 2 of an air quality statement from Environment Canada, the opposition leader once again asked the government to make the link to climate change.
It's science, right? This is no ordinary fire season. People are worried that this is our new normal, and they are scared.
I'm actually in shock that the Leader of Opposition is politicizing wildfires. It's staggering, really.
He says the province will spare no expense on fighting the fires. Later, the minister responsible did accept the connection to climate change after not doing so yesterday.
We very much acknowledge that that is real, but firefighting is very much about the here and now.
One scientist explains the connection, however the fires may have started.
As we warm the planet up, one of the things we're going to see is drying conditions and also higher temperatures, and both of those things contribute to wildfires.
He says that means extreme wildfire seasons like this one could happen more frequently. Lorenda Redicomp, CBC News, Toronto.
And one final note on all the fires. The air quality issues are not isolated to just Ontario. Take a look at New York City today. Their skyline shrouded in an eerie orange haze. And while more than a dozen U.S. states are under air quality alerts right now, the air quality in New York City was the worst in the world today, according to a Swiss air monitoring company. The conditions even forcing flights to halt briefly at New York's LaGuardia Airport. Turning to other news now, one man is dead. Another is facing impaired driving charges after a head-on crash in Oakville. Halton police say a 58-year-old man was driving a Vespa when it collided with an SUV going in the other direction. He was pronounced dead in the hospital. The man driving the SUV, a 25-year-old from Burlington, was arrested and charged with impaired operation causing death. A Toronto man who allegedly threatened to shoot mayoral candidates has been released on bail. 29-year-old junior Francois Lavaguesse was granted bail today with conditions. He faces a string of charges stemming from an incident last Thursday where he allegedly entered a public place in the area of Mortimer and Greenwood Avenues with what appeared to be a firearm and made the threats. Police later said the firearm was a pellet gun. Now, the threats prompted several mayoral candidates to pull out of a debate scheduled for that night, and the debate itself was later canceled. Today, 8 candidates vying to become Toronto's next mayor traded barbs at a debate partly focused on seniors' issues, and the roundtable format created some heated crosstalk at times. Josh Matlow clashed with former journalist Anthony Furey over Furey's promise to shut down Toronto's supervised injection sites.
I actually don't think it's a laughing matter because I've been meeting with parents who are affected
by the drug crisis. You're fear-mongering, Anthony, and you know it.
Fear-mongering?
Yes.
Excuse me?
Yes!
In addition to the 6 top polling candidates, Chloe Brown was included in the event. Brown placed 3rd in last fall's mayoral election, and she took former police chief Mark Saunders to task during a segment on encampments.
You've caused this problem. You turned a blind eye when so many communities said day after day, this is an issue, help us, help us, help us. City Hall did not respond. The police budget has gone up by 12%
The police
over a
did not
decade.
respond.
This is your wheelhouse.
This is about dealing with the problem.
Let's be serious.
The encampments.
The Carp-Zoomer radio debate was the last major debate ahead of the opening of advance polls tomorrow. And an early hiccup to tell you about in the by-election. A mail-in drop box was vandalized last night, and some ballots could have been compromised. Patrick Swadden takes a look at how the city is handling it and what else voters can do to ensure their ballots are counted.
The mayoral by-election is less than 3 weeks away, and if you're the type to skip the lines and get that vote in early, you probably know that mail-in voting has already been going on for a week.
But it hasn't gone off without a hitch. Toronto Elections says this mail-in drop box was vandalized around 9:30 on Tuesday evening. The last time it was emptied? Around 9:45 that morning. Officials estimate around 7 completed mail-in ballots were damaged during the incident.
Now, if you did drop in a mail-in ballot at the Wellesley Community Centre between those hours, don't worry. Reach out to this email address. They'll make sure your vote gets counted.
But Toronto Elections has instituted some changes, like moving all drop boxes inside.
Apparently, and not this box, but apparently boxes around the city have been vandalized.
Cecil Community Centre Executive Director Daniel Ankle says Toronto Elections moved the box inside, and he's worried people won't see it.
The other thing I was thinking was people know that it's outside, and if they don't see it outside, they'll just think you can't vote here anymore.
But Toronto Elections assures voters, while those mail-in drop boxes are inside, they'll be fully accessible during building hours.
Now, if you are planning on voting by mail, remember, the election is June 26th, but your deadline to get that ballot into a drop box, June 15th at noon.
Each ward has a drop box, and you can leave your ballot at any of them, like here, or here,
and here.
And remember, it's important to get that vote in. Voter apathy was widespread in the last election, with only 29% of eligible voters casting a ballot. This activist thinks we could improve that with a simple solution.
Mail everyone a paper ballot that they either have to fill out or throw out. Make them choose between one of those two actions.
Dave Meslin with Unlock Democracy Canada says more options for advance voting would encourage more people to cast a ballot.
I don't think most people are aware of advance voting. It doesn't tend to attract a lot of people.
But hey, mail-in voting isn't your only way to get that ballot in early. You can also visit an advanced polling location starting tomorrow, June 8th, running through June 13th.
Each ward has 2 advanced polling locations, open 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily. Patrick Swadden, CBC News.
Welcome back. The bombshell partnership between the PGA and its Saudi-backed rival continued to make waves today as the Canadian Open swings into action tomorrow. Some of golf's biggest superstars even weighed into the controversy. Greg Ross has the details.
Rory McIlroy teed off bright and early this morning for a practice round at Oakdale Golf Club. He still seemed somewhat teed off hours later when he faced the media.
I still hate live. Like, I hate live. Like, I hope it goes away.
McIlroy not pulling any punches when it comes to his feelings about a partnership between the PGA and the LIV Golf Tour, which lured a number of big-name golfers away from the PGA by offering them tens of millions of dollars.
And yeah, it was a surprise. I knew there had been discussions going on in the background. I knew that lines of communication had been opened up. I obviously didn't expect it to happen as quickly as it did.
For the past year, McIlroy has defended the PGA Tour and condemned the golfers who took the payday to go and play for LIV, which is backed by the Saudi government. Today, McIlroy laid out his understanding of this new partnership between the two organizations.
You know, all the headlines were PGA Tour merges with LIV, and LIV has got nothing to do with this, right? I mean, it's the PGA Tour, DP World Tour, and the Public Investment Fund are basically partnering to create a new company.
It's still not clear what will happen to the golfers who left to play on the LIV Tour. Names like Phil Mickelson and Dustin Johnson. They were disqualified from competing in any PGA events.
When you look at what they did and how they did it, it wasn't great. Obviously, they took the bag, they left. It remains to be seen, but perhaps they're not going to be able to play on the PGA Tour. They may be able to just play only for this new entity that will include PGA Tour golfers.
There still has to be consequences to actions. You know, the people that left the PGA Tour irreparably harmed this tour.
It appears some of the finer details of this agreement still need to be worked out, but there are some questions about whether or not players who turned down big money from LIV Golf and stood behind the PGA Tour will be compensated for that.
The simple answer is yes. The complex answer is how does that happen?
It may take a while before we get these answers. In the meantime, McIlroy says he's happy to shift his attention back to playing golf. This week, he will try to win his 3rd straight Canadian Open. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Time now for a look at the long-range forecast. And Colette, smoky air continues to be a problem as we deal with this early start to the wildfire season.
Yeah, and Chris, you know, this whole air quality situation really makes, I hope, folks kind of appreciate how we are all connected when it comes to climate change, seeing the hot conditions, dry conditions, the fires. Well, maybe we're not right on top of those fires. They're in Western Quebec or parts of Ontario and not in our neighborhood, still can have an impact because we're all tied together by the atmosphere and that smoke pulling in our direction, as we know. Some of the worst of it, of course, closer to the fires, but that northerly flow, as we look at the forecast, pulls it down into our skies. So we actually could see things in the city tomorrow getting a little bit worse at times because it does change hour by hour as it kind of moves around. And then as we go towards the end of the week, we should actually, although it may still be bad into cottage country, it will be improving. You're seeing reds here, but not as much of the purple, right, where it's really thick and intense at the surface. So that's why another couple of days still taking it easy, staying indoors if you're struggling, and then we should at least get a break. But I mean, we got to look at this season as a whole, and this will likely come back again. So we are seeing the clouds that are pushing in from east to west in this case. Now, not a lot of rain shower here, but it brings up the dew points a little bit, the humidity a little, so that can kind of help with the dryness. And then although we'll have a risk of some spotty showers, we get into for Thursday and tonight, but a better chance into Friday of seeing that coming in. But then you also get into some clearing into southwestern Ontario as we go towards that. So overnight temperatures, a range. Southwestern Ontario, Windsor 10, 11 for your low. For Toronto, 12 to 13 in terms of what we'll be seeing. Tomorrow, we'll have increasing cloudiness, but really it doesn't matter because of the smoky conditions. It's hard to even tell, right? Our air quality health index forecast for tomorrow is going to be high. So is the UV index, even with that haziness, all right? Only 18 for that daytime high. Better chance for some showers into Friday. Saturday, actually looking like it could be quite a nice day and feel a little better and breathe a little bit better. And then some wet weather comes back in.
All right, Colette, thank you. Have a good night. Finally, tonight, 2 tiger cubs made a big splash today. They attended their first swimming lesson at a London zoo. Crispin pounced on plastic balls in the water as their proud parents looked on, and zookeepers there in London got the pond ready for swimming by clearing it of leaves and bark chips, which had accumulated over the winter. These 2 are Sumatran tigers, which are considered an endangered species. And there are now only a few hundred of them in the wild. And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Maribel Tarouk has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. And I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. And we'll leave you tonight with some more pictures of our top story today, the haze that has been hanging over the city of Toronto. Be careful out there if you're spending extended periods of time. Some people even advising wearing masks out there. Have a good night, everyone.